Imagine waking up one day and realizing the world wants you to hide who you are, and then choosing to become a superstar anyway. These 30 fearless game changers did not just survive Hollywood, they rewrote its rules forever. Their courage will leave you speechless. Their journeys will shatter everything you thought you knew. If you are ready to see the real legends of today, hit that subscribe button and join a movement that refuses to be silent. Elliot Page. There was a time when Elliot Page would look into the mirror and barely recognize the person staring back. To the world, he was a celebrated Hollywood star, lighting up the screen in hits like Juno and Inception. But inside, Elliot was crumbling. For years, he carried the crushing weight of pretending, smiling at cameras, walking red carpets, playing roles both on and off screen. No one could see the silent battle raging within. Have you ever worn a mask so heavy that it almost broke you? That was Elliot's life, until he decided he could not live in hiding anymore. The journey to becoming Elliot Page was not instant or easy. It took years of soul-searching, therapy, whispered hopes, and terrifying questions. In December 2020, Elliot finally told the world he was transgender. It was a moment of breathtaking honesty and a leap into the unknown. Surgery, hormones, rediscovering himself piece by piece. Every step was a revolution. And yet, even as his body began to align with his soul, Elliot faced brutal backlash and relentless scrutiny. It would have been easy to retreat, but Elliot chose to rise, stronger, freer, and more visible than ever before. Today, Elliot Page stands as living proof that embracing who you truly are can change everything. Look at him now, smiling not because he has to, but because he finally can. His voice no longer trembles, his eyes no longer hide, his spirit shines unburdened. And maybe, just maybe, his courage reminds us all that our truest selves are worth fighting for. What would you risk to finally be yourself? Elliot's story dares us to believe the fight is worth it. Laverne Cox. Before the spotlight found her, Laverne Cox was just a child in Alabama, terrified of being too feminine, punished for expressing who she really was. Born male and assigned that role by everyone around her, she spent years believing something was broken inside her. But deep down, Laverne knew she was not a boy pretending, she was a girl waiting to live. Have you ever had to hide every part of yourself just to survive? It was not until college, after escaping to New York City, that Laverne began to peel back the fear. She learned the word transgender, and for the first time, her confusion had clarity. Her body, her voice, her reflection, they were no longer enemies. Step by step, hormone therapy and gender-affirming surgeries helped her align the outside with the truth inside. But the real transformation was emotional, shedding shame and walking into the world as her full self. No filter, no apology. When she finally broke through with Orange is the New Black, Laverne did not just become famous, she became a beacon. Her visibility said to every trans person, you are not alone, you are not a mistake. And maybe that is why her story matters so deeply. Because being Laverne Cox is not just about becoming a woman, it is about becoming free. Hunter Schafer. Before fame, before runways, before euphoria, there was a kid in North Carolina staring into a bathroom mirror, asking a question no one had the answer to. Who am I really? Hunter Schafer was assigned male at birth, but something never fit. As early as middle school, she felt a growing ache, a mismatch between how the world saw her and how she saw herself. Puberty hit like a betrayal. Every physical change felt like being pushed further from the person she knew she was meant to be. Can you imagine waking up every day feeling like a stranger in your own body? That was Hunter's reality. By high school, Hunter found a word that lit a fire in her soul: transgender. That discovery changed everything. With trembling hands and a heart racing in fear, she came out to her family. There were tears, there was confusion, but slowly, there was also love. and with love came space to breathe. Hunter began hormone therapy, started transitioning socially, and step by step, the mirror started to reflect someone she recognized. She wasn't trying to become someone new. She was finally becoming herself. And maybe that's the most powerful kind of transformation. Not about changing who you are, but reclaiming it. Transitioning gave Hunter more than peace. It gave her purpose. She spoke out against anti-trans laws, sued her state for discrimination, and stood tall not just for herself, but for every young person who felt unseen. Her journey wasn't linear, and it wasn't easy. But Hunter Schafer never walked it with shame. She walked it with grace, grit, and a kind of beauty the world could no longer ignore. So if you're watching this and you're in that mirror moment, scared, searching, remember this: Hunter was there too, and she made it out shining. Michaela Jaé Rodriguez. As a child growing up in Newark, Michaela Jaé Rodriguez always knew something felt off. Born into a world that insisted she was a boy, she quietly carried the truth that her soul did not match her body. She would pray at night, asking to wake up in the right skin, the right name, the right life. But there was no miracle overnight. Just a young girl trapped in silence, searching for words to describe what she knew deep down: that she was meant to be her, not him. In her late teens, she found the courage to begin transitioning. It was not glamorous, it was terrifying. Hormone therapy started in secret, roles stopped coming, friends fell away. She stepped away from acting not because she gave up, but because she needed space to transform, emotionally, physically, and spiritually. In that quiet, she met herself. She changed her name, she embraced her reflection. And when she came back, it was not as someone seeking approval, it was as a woman who knew her worth, even if Hollywood had not caught up yet. Then came Pose, a moment of alignment between her truth and her talent. As Blanca, Michaela did more than act. She gave voice to the fight she had lived. Her Emmy and Golden Globe wins were milestones, but her real legacy is the light she shines for others walking the same path. Her story is not just about being trans. It is about reclaiming your identity with grace, grit, and heart. So if you're listening and wondering if it gets better, look at Michaela. She is proof that it does. Kim Petras. At just 16 years old, Kim Petras made headlines as one of the youngest people in the world to undergo gender confirmation surgery. But her story began long before the cameras arrived. Born in Germany, Kim knew from the moment she could speak that she was a girl. No questions, no confusion, just certainty. While most kids were figuring out what cartoons they liked, she was already facing therapists, doctors, and doubters. And still, she smiled. She once said, "I hated my body so much, I just wanted to be myself." That quiet courage would later shake the foundations of pop culture. Her move to Los Angeles was not just a career choice, it was a declaration. With no major label backing her, Kim built her empire one song at a time, starting with tracks recorded in her bedroom. Her breakout hit, "I Don't Want It At All," didn't just top Spotify charts, it announced her arrival with glitter and fire. But behind the pop anthems was a woman who had clawed her way out of every box she had been shoved into. In an industry still unsure how to embrace trans talent, Kim didn't wait for an invitation. She was the invitation. And by the time she won a Grammy with Sam Smith, history wasn't just made, it was remixed. So if you have ever felt like the world refuses to see you, maybe Kim Petras is your sign to be louder, to be brighter, to be more. Because her journey isn't just about transition, it's about triumph. What part of her story resonates most with you? Let us know in the comments. And if Kim's courage moved you, do not forget to like and subscribe for more stories that matter. Indya Moore. In the crowded streets of the Bronx, a little child stood still, feeling invisible in a world too loud to notice their quiet truth. Indya Moore was assigned male at birth, But every heartbeat told a different story, one of a girl fighting to exist. Behind every forced smile and silent prayer, Indya held on to a dream that one day, being herself would not feel like breaking the rules. Have you ever wished the world would see you? Not the mask you wear, but the soul you hide. At just 14, Indya chose freedom over fear, stepping into the unknown without a map. They faced cold nights, hunger, and a society that tried to shame them back into silence. It would have been easy to disappear. But something stronger kept pushing Indya forward. A voice that said, "You deserve to live your truth, no matter the cost." Every step was a battle, but also a small victory against a world that refused to understand. Today, Indya Moore shines not because the world finally accepted them, but because they accepted themselves first. Their journey is not just a story of transition. It is a story of defiance, of tenderness, of fierce, unstoppable hope. And if Indya's bravery sparked even a flicker inside you, maybe it is your turn to stop hiding. The world is waiting for the real you. Dominique Jackson. Dominique Jackson was never meant to live small. From the moment she took her first breath in Tobago, destiny whispered that her life would not be an easy one. But it would be extraordinary. Forced into roles she never chose, Dominique spent her early years fighting a battle between who the world demanded she be and who she knew she was. By the time she arrived in New York City, she was carrying the weight of 100 battles already fought, and she was just getting started. Can you imagine landing in a new city with nothing but your truth to hold on to? That kind of courage is rare. That kind of courage is Dominique. In the shadows of the ballroom scene, Dominique turned survival into art. She ruled the runways with a fire that refused to be tamed, even when the world tried to erase her. Modeling agencies shut their doors. Casting calls went unanswered. But instead of shrinking, she rose louder, prouder, fiercer. Every strut, every pose was an act of rebellion against a world that said she did not belong. Think about it. How many people have been told no and walked away? Dominique heard 1,000 no's and still said yes to herself. What once seemed impossible for Dominique is now undeniable. She has become an unstoppable force. As Electra on Pose, she did not just perform, she made history. She stood in her full truth, unapologetic and magnetic, challenging the world to catch up. Dominique Jackson is not simply a success story. She is a living reminder that authenticity can light a fire that nothing and no one can extinguish. And if she could carve her destiny with bare hands and an unbreakable spirit, maybe you too have more power inside you than you realize. Are you ready to claim it? Angelica Ross. Growing up in Racine, Wisconsin, Angelica Ross always knew she was different. Even when the world around her demanded she stay silent, she tried to conform, joining the Navy, chasing acceptance. But deep down, she was living a life that was never truly hers. Choosing to leave the military and embrace her truth was not just brave, it was revolutionary. Angelica set out on a path few dared to walk, facing fears and barriers that would have stopped many. Have you ever felt that pull to stop pretending and finally step into who you are meant to be? The road was far from easy. Angelica faced homelessness, rejection, and endless challenges, but she refused to let them define her. Teaching herself computer coding, she built a new future, first for herself and then for others through her company, Transtech Social Enterprises. At the same time, Hollywood came calling. With groundbreaking roles in Pose and American Horror Story, Angelica shattered stereotypes and gave voice to stories too long ignored. Watching her rise, you cannot help but wonder, what dreams could we all unlock if we stopped letting fear hold the pen? Today, Angelica Ross is more than an actress. She is a beacon. Her life reminds us that being different is not a flaw. It is a superpower. She fought to live her truth so others might find the courage to live theirs too. Angelica's story is not just inspiring, it is a challenge to every one of us. When will you stop hiding and start shining? Jamie Clayton. Before the world knew her face, Jamie Clayton was just a young dreamer walking the streets of San Diego, carrying a secret too big to hide forever. Born into a body that did not match her soul, Jamie knew early on that blending in was not her path. Instead, she chose truth over fear, a decision that would shape the rest of her life. Imagine having to fight the world just to be seen for who you really are. Moving to New York City, Jamie first worked as a makeup artist, quietly building the courage to show her true self. It was not easy. Opportunities were rare and acceptance even rarer. But Jamie kept pushing forward. Her breakout role in Sense8 was not just acting, it was living out loud. Playing Nomi Marks, she gave a face and voice to millions who had long felt invisible. Have you ever felt like someone's story gave you permission to dream bigger? Today, Jamie Clayton is not just a Hollywood star, she is a symbol of what it means to live fearlessly. Through every step, she has shown that true beauty comes from embracing who you are without apology. And maybe, just maybe, hearing her journey sparks a little courage in you too. What dream inside you is waiting to be set free? Josie Totah. Josie Totah always had a spark that made her stand out in Hollywood. As a young actor, she lit up every screen she appeared on. Hiding a truth she carried quietly inside. Imagine growing up while the world watches you, yet feeling like they are cheering for someone you are not. For Josie, that silent struggle pushed her towards something bigger, the decision to live openly and fully, no matter the cost. In 2018, Josie shared her truth with the world. She is a proud transgender woman. It was not a publicity move, it was a powerful act of self-love. She spoke with honesty and heart, instantly touching those who had waited too long for someone like her. Have you ever felt like you needed to break free from a role that did not fit you? Josie's courage showed that living as your true self is the greatest role of all. Josie Totah is more than a star. She is a trailblazer. Whether she is making us laugh in Saved by the Bell or standing up for trans youth, Josie shines brighter than ever. Her journey reminds us that the bravest thing you can do is be yourself. And if Josie can do it under the spotlight, maybe we can find the courage to do it too. Leyna Bloom. Growing up on the south side of Chicago, Leyna Bloom always knew she was different and destined for something bigger. In a world that often refused to see her, she carved her own reflection with courage and grit. Her father's unwavering support became her armor, helping her transition not just into the woman she dreamed of becoming, but into a symbol of fierce hope. Can you imagine stepping into every room knowing you were rewriting the rules just by existing? Leyna's transition was never just personal, it was revolutionary. When she made history as the first openly transgender woman of color to grace the pages of Sports Illustrated, it was not just a photo shoot, it was a statement. Her journey shattered barriers that had kept so many silent, so many invisible. How often do we get to witness someone live out their truth so boldly that it forces the world to look, to listen, to change? Today, Leyna Bloom stands as a beacon for anyone who has ever been told they were too much or not enough. Her story is not about fitting in. It is about standing out and lighting the way for others. Maybe her courage makes you wonder, what dreams could you chase if you stopped asking for permission? Because if Leyna has taught us anything, it is that true beauty begins the moment you dare to live it. Carmen Carrera. Long before Carmen Carrera became a household name, she was quietly fighting a battle few could see. To the world, she was a glamorous figure on television, capturing attention with effortless charm. But deep down, Carmen carried a secret, a quiet truth about who she really was. Have you ever felt like you were performing a role just to survive? For Carmen, every step in the spotlight was a silent promise to herself. One day, she would no longer have to pretend. The decision to live openly as a transgender woman did not come wrapped in applause. Carmen faced criticism from both familiar places and unexpected ones. Even some who once cheered for her hesitated when she revealed her truth. But Carmen never backed down. With each interview, each runway appearance, and each advocacy campaign, she built a new legacy, one not defined by fear, but by authenticity. Her journey was never about chasing fame, it was about claiming her right to simply be. Now, Carmen Carrera stands not just as an icon, but as a symbol of possibility. She shattered the ceilings many said would never break, becoming a voice for those still finding their own. If her story resonates with you, maybe it is because deep down we all crave that same freedom, to be seen, heard, and loved for exactly who we are. And Carmen's fearless spirit reminds us that sometimes the most powerful transformation is simply stepping into the light. Alexandra Billings. Growing up in a world that barely spoke the word transgender, Alexandra Billings always knew she was meant for something more. Behind the curtain of performances and applause, there was a girl who longed to be seen for who she truly was. Even as a young artist, dazzling audiences with her talent, Alexandra carried a quiet ache, a secret only she could hear. Have you ever smiled wide while hiding something that heavy? For Alexandra, that hidden truth became the spark that eventually set her entire life on fire. In the 1980s, coming out was not just brave, it was revolutionary. Alexandra faced doors slammed shut, roles denied, and whispers that cut deeper than any review. But she pushed forward, refusing to let a world built on fear define her. When she stepped into her groundbreaking role on Transparent, it was more than acting, it was a living declaration of survival. Every scene she touched felt like a triumph, not just for her, but for every person who had ever been told they were too different to dream. Today, Alexandra Billings stands as a fierce, fearless symbol of what it means to own your truth. She teaches, she acts, she inspires, lighting a path for others to follow. And maybe, just maybe, her story makes us wonder, what if the most powerful thing we can ever do is to simply be ourselves? Chaz Bono. When Chaz Bono first looked into the mirror and saw a stranger staring back, he knew something had to change. It was not fame he was chasing, he had that since birth. It was something deeper, something only he could define. Imagine standing in front of the world, where every headline tries to tell you who you are, and still daring to say, no, this is me. That kind of courage is not born overnight. It is built, one quiet, painful choice at a time. Through surgeries, transitions, and endless media storms, Chaz never asked for sympathy, only understanding. He turned down the noise of the critics and turned up the volume of his truth. It was never about becoming someone new. It was about finally coming home to himself. And while cameras clicked and headlines screamed, Chaz kept moving forward, one fearless step after another. Have you ever wondered how strong you have to be to rebuild your entire life while the world watches? Today, Chaz Bono is not defined by the name he was born into or the fame that once shadowed him. He is defined by the life he built with his own two hands, brick by honest brick. His journey is not just inspiring, it is a blueprint for anyone who has ever felt lost in their own skin. And maybe today is the day we all ask ourselves, what would it feel like to finally live without apology? Madison. Before the world knew her name, Madison was already a force. bold, loud, and deeply human. Raised in Miami, she knew early on that the world was not built to make space for Black trans women. But instead of waiting for permission, she carved her own path. Whether through struggle or defiance, Madison chose visibility, not just for herself, but for everyone told they were too much to belong. Her rise began online, where her authenticity turned into a movement. While others tried to clean up their pasts, Madison held hers with pride. She had worked in adult entertainment, yes, but that did not define her. What defined her was resilience. With each video, each tweet, each viral moment, she flipped stigma into power. And when television finally called, she did not walk through the door quietly. She kicked it wide open. Now, she is more than a star. She is a symbol, not just of trans excellence, but of self-made success. With her own reality show and a voice that commands attention in any room, T's Madison is living proof that truth, even when messy or misunderstood, can still be powerful. And maybe, just maybe, it is that raw truth that makes her unforgettable. Brian Michael Smith. Long before Brian Michael Smith made history on screen, he was writing a quieter, more personal story, one that began in a small Michigan town and unfolded with more courage than any scripted role. Assigned female at birth, Brian knew from an early age that his truth lived beyond the lines others had drawn for him. But how do you speak your truth in a world that refuses to hear it? In college, while training to become a journalist, he started laying the groundwork for something far more radical: living as himself. Brian's journey into acting was never about fame. It was about representation. For years, he took on roles where he had to hide his identity or play parts that didn't reflect who he was. That all changed when he appeared on Queen Sugar as a Black transgender man, a first in network television history. From there, his momentum only grew, landing a groundbreaking role as firefighter Paul Strickland on 911, Lone Star. But make no mistake, this was not just a career milestone. It was a cultural shift. His presence gave voice to countless others who never thought they'd see someone like them in a hero's uniform. Now, Brian stands as one of the most influential transgender men in Hollywood. But he doesn't wear that title for applause. He wears it for purpose. His strength lies not in playing strong characters, but in showing what real strength looks like: honesty, persistence, and a refusal to disappear. Have you ever thought about the power of being seen, not just as who others want you to be, but as who you truly are? Brian Michael Smith lives that power every day. Ian Alexander. Growing up between cultures and expectations, Ian Alexander always felt like an outsider, even in his own skin. Born in 2001 to a Vietnamese-American family with military roots, he learned early on how to adapt. But nothing could prepare him for the inner conflict he carried, knowing he was a boy long before the world could see it. Quiet and observant, Ian didn't seek attention, he sought truth. When he landed his breakout role in the OA, it wasn't just a win for his career, it was a statement. As the first out trans Asian American actor on TV, he became a symbol of visibility at just 15. But the pressure was real. Ian was suddenly navigating interviews, fan attention, and headlines while still trying to understand himself. Instead of folding under that weight, he used it to speak up for representation, for mental health, for kids like him who were still in hiding. Each character he plays now adds another layer to his message, that being different is powerful. Without loud declarations or dramatic turns, Ian Alexander is reshaping Hollywood from the inside. He is not just showing up, he is clearing the path for the next generation to show up too. And maybe, just maybe, someone watching will finally see themselves. Have you? Geena Rocero. Geena Rocero was just a child in the Philippines when she first learned that truth could be dangerous. Assigned male at birth, but knowing deep inside she was a girl, Geena grew up balancing dreams of beauty pageants with the fear of being found out. At 15, she began her transition in secret. By 17, she was crowned in transgender beauty contests, but always in the shadows, never fully seen. After moving to the United States, Geena pursued a career in fashion. She found success, became a professional model, and walked runways worldwide. But one part of her life stayed hidden. Even as her face appeared in magazines, her truth remained off the record. That silence, she realized, was its own kind of prison. So in 2014, during a TED Talk that stunned the world, Geena came out publicly as a transgender woman. The room stood still, and then it erupted in applause. Since then, Geena has become more than a model. She is a force. Through her advocacy and her organization Gender Proud, she champions trans rights globally, especially for communities often overlooked. Her story is not just one of visibility, it is one of liberation. And maybe it makes you wonder, how many more voices are waiting to be heard, just like hers once was? Laith Ashley. Before he became a face on billboards or a voice in music videos, Laith Ashley was a young Dominican-American kid from Harlem, trying to understand why the mirror never quite matched how he felt inside. Born female, Laith struggled silently, wrestling with confusion and fear in a world that had no blueprint for someone like him. He came out first as a lesbian because it was the only language he had. But deep down, he knew that label did not fit. It took years of internal battles before he found the word that did: transgender. His modeling career began almost by accident. One Instagram post, shirtless and confident after top surgery, went viral. Overnight, Laith became a sensation, one of the first trans men to front major fashion campaigns. But with the spotlight came scrutiny. Some praised him as a symbol of progress, others hurled hate. Through it all, Laith stayed grounded, using his platform to educate and inspire, not just to pose. He brought vulnerability into conversations about masculinity, and that alone was revolutionary. Whether through fashion, acting, or music, Laith continues to challenge how the world sees trans men, especially men of color. His presence is bold, but his message is even louder. That being yourself is not just brave, it is beautiful. Think about that. How powerful is one person's truth when it makes room for thousands more? Arisce Wanzer. Arisce Wanzer did not grow up imagining herself on magazine covers or strutting down runways. In fact, as a kid in Virginia, she barely imagined a future where she could live authentically at all. Assigned male at birth, Arisce always felt like the roles she was expected to play were written for someone else. It was not until her college years that the truth began to surface, quietly at first, then louder with each step toward womanhood. She moved to Miami, then to New York, chasing her dreams in heels and with unshakable determination. Her transition did not happen behind closed doors. It unfolded in full view of the fashion world, and she made no apologies for it. Arisce became one of the first openly transgender models to sign with a major agency, not as a token, but as a trailblazer. She worked with Vogue, Elle, and strutted the runway with confidence that could only come from someone who fought hard to be seen. Off the catwalk, Arisce's voice has become just as powerful as her image. Through interviews, activism, and humor, she strips away the myths surrounding trans identities and reminds the world that visibility matters. But honesty matters more. Ever wonder what it looks like when someone walks in both pride and purpose? Just follow Arisce's footsteps. Nava Mau. It began with silence. Growing up in a Mexican-American family in Texas, Nava Mau knew the weight of unspoken truths. As a child, her identity felt like something sacred, but hidden. Assigned male at birth, she moved through the world with questions she could not yet answer. There were no role models on TV, no one to point to and say, "That's me." So she became her own guide. Transitioning was not a performance, it was a reclamation. Years later, with a calm voice and eyes full of stories, Nava stepped in front of the camera in HBO's Generation. She was not just playing a trans woman, she was bringing a lifetime of lived experience to every line, every glance. Audiences could feel the truth radiating from her because it was real. But Nava was never interested in fame. Her deeper mission lived beyond the screen, amplifying the voices of those still silenced by fear, culture, or lack of access. Behind the scenes, she works as a therapist and advocate, merging art with healing. Her journey is not just about visibility, it is about transformation, and the courage it takes to rewrite the narrative when the world gave you none. So ask yourself, what does it mean to become the person you needed most when you were younger? For Nava Mau, it means showing up, for herself and for all the others still waiting to see someone like her. Zach Barak did not grow up dreaming of being the first anything. What he wanted was much simpler and more radical, to exist as himself. Raised in Illinois, Zach navigated his teenage years with a quiet intensity, hiding more than just the usual adolescent fears. While others tried to fit in, he was searching for the language to explain what never felt right. That search led him not to a textbook or a label, but to something braver: the decision to live out loud as a transgender man. When Spider-Man: Far From Home hit theaters in 2019, most audiences saw action, spectacle, and teen drama. What many missed, unless they looked closely, was a historic moment. Zach became the first openly trans actor in a Marvel film. No press release, no headline announcement, just presence. And that was the point. He was there not as a symbol, but as a student in Peter Parker's world, proving that trans people belong in every story, even the ones with web slingers and explosions. But Zach is not stopping at a cameo. Through stand-up comedy, interviews, and voice work, he is reshaping what it means to be trans and funny, trans and visible, trans and whole. His honesty cuts through the noise, reaching people who need to hear that their stories are worth telling too. Maybe the real superpower here is not invisibility or flight. It is living truthfully when the world expects you to hide. Leo Sheng, born in China and adopted into a white American family in Michigan, Leo Sheng's earliest memories were filled with questions about identity, belonging, and the silent space between cultures. But even deeper than that was a truth he had no words for as a child. He was not a girl, no matter what the world saw. That realization did not arrive all at once. It crept in, soft but persistent, until it could no longer be ignored. Transitioning was not just a personal decision, it was a lifeline. His journey first reached others through social media, where Leo documented his transition with striking honesty and vulnerability. He did not sugarcoat the hard parts, nor did he pose as a polished role model. Instead, he gave people something far more powerful: the permission to be unfinished, to be learning, to be real. That rawness caught the attention of casting directors, and soon he was cast as Micah in the L-Word Generation Q, a show that had once shaped his understanding of queerness from the outside, and now welcomed him in. But Leo's impact goes far beyond the screen. He speaks, writes, and shows up for conversations most people avoid, about race, class, disability, and transmasculinity. Every step he takes is layered with meaning, because few people carry as many intersecting identities with such fearless grace. If you have ever felt like you did not fit anywhere, Leo Sheng reminds you, maybe you were meant to build your own space and let others in. Talisa García. Talisa García was not born into the spotlight. She was born in Chile, then adopted and raised in the United Kingdom, far from the echoes of her origins, but not from the weight of her identity. Assigned male at birth, Talisa knew early on that something fundamental did not align. But in the conservatism of her surroundings, voicing that truth felt impossible. She carried her femininity in silence like a secret melody waiting to be played aloud. As she grew, so did her sense of purpose. Talisa transitioned with both grace and grit, entering a world that rarely made room for trans women, especially those with layered identities like hers. She pursued acting not to be famous, but to be seen. And when she was cast in the Disney Plus series Willow, she became the first openly trans actress cast in a Lucasfilm production. For many, it was just a casting decision. For others, it was a cultural shift. In a franchise built on magic and rebellion, Talisa's presence was both. Her power lies not in loud declarations, but in the quiet strength of simply showing up, elegant, unapologetic, and deeply human. Through her work, she tells young trans people, you do not have to shout to be heard, but you do have to speak. And maybe that is what makes her story linger long after the credits roll. Isis King. Before the flash of cameras and the strut of runways, Isis King stood in a homeless shelter, unsure of where life would lead. Assigned male at birth and growing up in a conservative environment, she always knew who she was inside, but the world was not ready to see her. Transitioning was not just a leap of faith, it was survival. And during one of the most vulnerable times in her life, fate placed her in front of the lens of America's Next Top Model. When Isis became the first openly transgender contestant on the show, it was a seismic moment for reality television. She walked into the competition not just to win, but to represent. Her grace, vulnerability, and unshakable honesty pushed conversations about gender identity into the mainstream. Viewers saw more than a model. They saw a woman claiming space in a world that had long denied her. The runway became her battleground, and she walked it with fire. Years later, Isis continues to break boundaries through acting, advocacy, and public speaking. But her message has always been clear. Beauty does not require permission. She stands for those who have been told they are too much or not enough. So if you have ever doubted your worth based on who you are, take a moment. Look at what Isis King built from nothing but self-belief. And ask yourself, what could you build if you believed too? Zión Moreno. Long before the bright lights of New York or the high drama of television, Zión Moreno was just a kid from Texas with a secret too heavy for her young shoulders. Assigned male at birth and born into a Mexican-American family, Zión felt the dissonance early on, the feeling that her reflection was a stranger. She wrote poetry, played with style, and used imagination as a shield. But self-expression could only go so far when the world demanded silence. Her move to Los Angeles was more than a career step, it was a declaration. Zión began modeling and slowly stepping into her truth. Each casting call, each photo shoot was a battle between authenticity and acceptance. But when Gossip Girl called, everything shifted. As Luna La, Zión brought elegance and edge to the reboot, not as a trans character, but simply as a character. That subtlety mattered. It was representation without labels, presence without explanation. Zión does not wave flags or demand attention. Her power lies in existing visibly and unapologetically. With every role, she opens doors for others like her, those who never thought they could be seen as glamorous, complex, or leading. And for anyone watching who feels like they are living in between versions of themselves, Zión's story quietly dares them to step into the light and take up space, because that space was always meant for them. Chella Man. Chella Man's story does not begin with a single challenge, it begins with many. Growing up in a small town in Pennsylvania, He was navigating life as a deaf, genderqueer, Chinese-American teen before most kids his age could spell intersectionality. Assigned female at birth, Chella always felt the limits the world placed on his body, his voice, and his identity. But instead of folding into those constraints, he started asking a bold question. Why not exist as all of myself? Art became his language before words could. On YouTube, he began documenting his transition, sharing the highs, the uncertainties, the messy in-betweens. His honesty cut through the noise. Viewers did not see a polished influencer. They saw a real person discovering freedom in his own skin. That raw vulnerability led to modeling campaigns, a book, speaking engagements, and eventually a groundbreaking role as Jericho in DC's Titans, marking one of the first times a deaf, trans, Asian American actor played a superhero. But Chella is more than a headline. He is a reminder that identity is not meant to be simplified or explained away. It is meant to be lived fully and loudly in every form. He paints, writes, signs, and speaks, all with the same mission: to make space for others who feel like they are too different to belong. The truth? That difference is exactly what makes his voice unforgettable. Lux Pascal. For years, Lux Pascal was seen but not truly known. Born in Chile, raised between cultures and countries, she grew up in the shadow of fame. Her brother Pedro Pascal was already a Hollywood name, but behind her quiet presence was a storm of questions. Assigned male at birth, Lux moved through the world with layers of silence, performance, and a yearning to feel whole. That ache, invisible to most, would one day become her power. Her transition began during her acting studies at Juilliard, a place where she finally gave herself permission to be seen. It was not a spotlight she was chasing. It was alignment. When she came out publicly in 2021, the world took notice, but Lux carried it with striking calm. She spoke of dignity, of visibility, of joy. There was no drama, no apology, just a young woman owning her space in both her native Chile and on the global stage. Lux is not only an actress, she is a symbol of what it means to come into yourself with both grace and fire. She advocates for trans rights with clarity and warmth, reminding others that womanhood is not defined by others' perceptions, but by the courage to live as your truest self. And maybe that is what makes her story linger. Not just because she is Pedro's sister, but because she is, unapologetically, Lux. Amiyah Scott. Amiyah Scott was never meant to blend in, and she never tried to. Born and raised in Louisiana, she knew from an early age that her spirit could not be boxed in by the gender assigned to her. By the time she was a teenager, Amiyah had already begun her transition, walking boldly into womanhood in a place that often met her with fear and ignorance. But instead of shrinking, she turned her uniqueness into a force. Her stunning looks and unapologetic attitude made her an internet icon before many even knew the term influencer. But behind the beauty was resilience. Amiyah carved her own path in entertainment, becoming the first transgender woman featured on the Real Housewives franchise, even if her story there was cut short. She did not stop. In Star, she landed a groundbreaking role, not just portraying a trans character, but helping shape the narrative behind the scenes, bringing lived truth into fiction. More than an actress, Amiyah is a movement. She uses her platform to celebrate authenticity, encourage self-love, and challenge how the media sees Black trans women. Her presence says what words cannot. I am here, I am enough. I am everything they said I could never be. And maybe the real question is, how many lives has she already helped rewrite, just by living out loud? Daniela Vega. In Santiago, Chile, long before the world would know her name, Daniela Vega was already breaking rules just by existing. Assigned male at birth, she grew up in a society that offered little room for those who dared to live outside its strict expectations. Yet even as a young girl facing rejection and misunderstanding, Daniela found her refuge in music. Singing opera became her first rebellion, her way of affirming, "I exist and I am beautiful." Her artistry would eventually catapult her onto the global stage with A Fantastic Woman, where she delivered a performance so raw, so luminous, that it forced audiences to confront their own prejudices. When the film won the Academy Award for Best Foreign Language Film in 2018, Daniela made history, not just as the first openly trans woman to present the Oscars, but as living proof that authenticity can move mountains. She did not just step into the spotlight, she reshaped it. Today, Daniela is more than an actress or a singer. She is a symbol of defiance wrapped in grace. She continues to speak out for trans rights, weaving art and activism into a single, powerful voice. Her journey dares all of us to ask, what becomes possible when we stop apologizing for who we are and start singing it into the world? These 30 incredible stars are living proof that truth, talent, and courage can change everything. They did not just find a place in Hollywood. They claimed it, they owned it, and they are paving the way for generations to come. If their stories moved you even just a little, make sure to subscribe, like, and share this video, because the world needs more voices that refuse to be silenced. And remember, the brightest lights are born from the boldest souls. Stay proud, stay loud. See you next time.